The streets of Lagos were alive that evening. Cars honking, hawkers shouting, the smell of roasted corn drifting through the air. By the roadside sat a thin boy, barely 12. His name was Tunde. His clothes were torn, his slippers broken, and in his small hand was the only food he had managed to buy all day. One roasted corn. He held it close, his stomach growling louder than the city noise. He was about to take a bite when a shadow fell over him. A woman in rags stood there shivering. Her eyes were tired, her lips cracked from thirst. "My child," she whispered, "please, can you spare me something to eat? I haven't eaten since yesterday." Tunde froze. That corn was his lifeline. Without it, he had nothing. His eyes darted from the food to the woman's trembling hands. "If I give it away, what will I eat?" he thought. The woman coughed weakly, her knees shaking. Tunde's heart softened. Slowly, he broke the roasted corn in half and stretched his hand toward her. "Here," he said, his voice low but steady. "It's not much, but we can share." The woman looked at him, stunned. Tears filled her eyes as she took the piece. "Bless you, my son," she whispered, biting into it with gratitude. But the moment she swallowed, something strange happened. Her ragged clothes began to shimmer. Her bent back straightened. Her tired eyes glowed with light. Tunde gasped, dropping the other half of his corn. The beggar was changing before his eyes. Where once stood a poor stranger, now stood a woman in a flowing gown, her presence commanding respect. Gold bangles shone on her arms, and her voice was no longer weak. It was powerful. "My child," she said, her tone both gentle and majestic, "you have passed the test." Tunde's mouth went dry. "To test? What do you mean?" The woman smiled. "I am not who you think I am. And because of your kindness, your life is about to change." Lightning cracked in the sky as her words sank in. He gave away his last meal, but what he got in return will shock you. Stick with us as we unfold this incredible story. And don't forget to like and subscribe. The rain began to drizzle lightly as Tunde stared at the woman who just transformed before his very eyes. A few passers-by stopped to look, whispering and pointing, but no one dared come close. Something about her presence commanded both fear and respect. Her gown shimmered in gold, as though spun from sunlight itself. Around her neck rested a necklace studded with stones that sparkled even brighter than diamonds. She looked nothing like the starving beggar she had been just seconds ago. Tunde's mouth hung open. The half-corn slipped from his hand, forgotten. Who are you?" he stammered, his voice trembling. The woman smiled gently, though her eyes carried a weight that seemed older than time. "I am Madame Rebecca," she said, her voice rolling like distant thunder. "You may know me by the whispers in the streets. The richest woman in Lagos." Tunde blinked, frozen. He had heard her name countless times. People told stories of her towering mansions, her fleet of cars, her endless businesses. She was said to dine with kings and presidents. To the poor, she was a distant legend, untouchable, unimaginable. And yet, she had stood before him disguised as a beggar. Tunde's voice cracked as he whispered, "But why would someone like you pretend to be poor?" Her smile grew faint, almost sad. "Because money cannot tell me who is truly good. I wanted to see with my own eyes if kindness still exists in this world. Every day I test people. Some ignore me, some insult me. But you—" She leaned closer, her golden bangles jingling softly. "You gave when you had nothing. And that, my boy, is the greatest wealth." Tunde's chest tightened. His empty stomach growled again, reminding him of his hunger. Yet his heart swelled with something he couldn't describe. No one had ever spoken to him like that before. Madame Rebecca lifted her hand, and suddenly a sleek black SUV rolled to the roadside as if summoned. The door opened, and a uniformed driver stepped out, bowing his head. "Come," she said firmly. "From this night on, you are no longer a boy of the streets. I will show you a new world." Tunde stumbled backward, panic rushing through him. "Wait, me? No, I can't. I don't belong in cars like that. I'm just a nobody." Her eyes flashed with fire. "Never call yourself that again. Kindness makes you more than a somebody. It makes you chosen." Before Tunde could protest further, she extended her hand. "Trust me. The crowd that had gathered murmured with shock. Some hissed in jealousy, others gasped in awe. But Tunde reached out slowly, his dirty hand trembling in hers. The moment their palms touched, a strange warmth spread through his body, as though destiny itself had wrapped around him. Madame Abeke pulled him gently toward the SUV. Tonight, Tunde, you walk into a new life. As the car door shut and the vehicle began to roll away, Tunde pressed his face against the tinted window, watching the familiar streets disappear. His heart raced with fear and excitement. What awaited him behind the mansion gates of Madame Abeke would not just change his life. It would test him in ways he could never imagine. He thought he was just helping a hungry stranger, but now he's stepping into a billionaire's mansion. What will happen inside those gates? Stick with us, because the real story is only just beginning. The SUV glided smoothly through the quiet streets of Ikoyi. To Tunde, each passing house looked larger than a school, their gates gleaming with gold paint, their walls high enough to touch the clouds. He pressed his forehead against the car window, his mouth hanging open. His life had been spent on the noisy side of Lagos, where generators roared, hawkers called, and children like him chased Keki Napep for spare change. This world, calm, neat, almost silent, felt like another planet. Beside him, Madame Abeke watched closely. She could see the awe in his eyes, the fear tucked behind it. She smiled softly. You don't need to be afraid, Tunde. Where we are going, you are safe. But Tunde only gripped his knees tighter. The chilled air from the car's vents made him shiver, and not just because it was cold. He didn't belong here. He was a boy with torn shorts, dusty feet, and nothing to his name. Then the car slowed. Before them stood massive gates of black iron carved with the heads of golden lions. They towered so high that Tunde felt like an insect before them. Cameras tilted automatically, and with a deep groan, the gates swung open. His breath caught in his throat. The driveway stretched endlessly, lined with palm trees wrapped in glowing fairy lights. Fountains danced in the middle of the yard, spraying arcs of crystal clear water into the air. And at the very end, like something from a dream, stood the mansion. White walls gleamed under the setting sun. Tall marble pillars reached to the heavens. Windows sparkled like diamonds. It was not a house. It was a palace. Tunde's lips trembled. This cannot be real. The SUV stopped. Two uniformed guards stepped forward and saluted Madame Abeke. But when their eyes landed on Tunde, their salutes faltered. They whispered to each other, and one frowned openly. Madam, one guard dared to say, why is this street boy here? Tunde's chest tightened. Heat rushed to his cheeks. He wanted the ground to swallow him. But Madame Abeke's eyes hardened. Watch your tongue, she snapped. This boy is under my protection. From tonight, he is part of this house. Treat him with respect. The guards stiffened, embarrassed. They bowed quickly, stepping aside. The giant doors opened, and Tunde followed Madame Abeke inside. The air inside was cold and perfumed with roses. Tunde froze at the sight before him. A chandelier made of crystal hung like a glittering crown, throwing rainbows across the polished marble floor. Servants in neat uniforms hurried about carrying trays of fruits, glasses of wine, and piles of documents. Velvet chairs lined the walls, golden statues glimmered, and the staircase curved upward like something out of a fairy tale. Tunde's feet felt glued to the floor. His entire life he had slept under leaking roofs, eaten scraps of bread, and shared water with stray dogs. Now he was standing in a world so rich, so powerful, it made him dizzy. But not everyone welcomed him. From across the room, a young man in a tailored suit descended the grand staircase. He was tall, well-groomed, and his shoes shone like mirrors. His name was Kunlay, Madame Abeke's nephew. He had grown up in this mansion, pampered like royalty, always believing it would one day be his kingdom. Kunlay's sharp eyes narrowed at Tunde. His lips curled with disgust. Aunt, he said slowly, his voice laced with sarcasm, who exactly is this? The servants froze where they stood. The music from the piano stopped mid-note. All eyes turned toward Madame Abeke. She smiled faintly, her hand resting on Tunde's shoulder. This is Tunde. He is under my care now. Treat him with respect. Kunlay laughed bitterly. Respect? For this Gutter rat? Look at him. Torn clothes, bare feet, smelling like the streets. Aunt, are you seriously bringing this filth into our home? The words cut like a blade. Tunda lowered his head, his fists trembling at his sides. He wanted to disappear, to run far from this humiliation. But Madame Abaki's eyes flashed. She stepped forward, her voice strong and commanding. Do not mistake my kindness for weakness, Kunlay. This boy showed a heart more noble than many men I've met. He stays here, and anyone who disrespects him disrespects me. Gas rippled among the servants. Even the guards at the door exchanged stunned looks. Kunlay's jaw tightened. His eyes burned with hatred, though he forced a smile. Very well, Aunt. If that is your wish but deep. Inside his heart boiled. He clenched his fists, silently vowing, this boy will regret ever stepping into this house. If Aunt thinks she can bring a street beggar into our world, I will make sure he suffers until he crawls back to the gutter where he belongs. Tunde, unaware of the storm brewing in Kunlay's heart, stood quietly staring at the glittering chandelier above. The mansion was everything he had never dreamed of. Luxury, beauty, safety. Yet something inside him whispered that this was not just the beginning of a dream. It was the start of a battle. The mansion was alive with laughter that evening. Music floated through the halls. The aroma of roasted chicken and jollof rice drifted from the kitchen, and servants moved briskly to prepare dinner. Madame Abeke had ordered a feast, insisting that Tunda sit at her table. For Tunda, it felt like a dream. He had bathed for the first time in weeks, dressed in clean clothes a kind maid had found for him. The fabric was simple compared to the glittering suits Kunlay wore, but to Tunda, it felt like gold against his skin. As he walked into the grand dining hall, his eyes widened again. The long table stretched endlessly, covered in white linen and shining silver plates. Chandeliers glowed above, and servants moved about pouring drinks. Madame Abeke smiled warmly at him. Come, Tunda, sit beside me. Tunda hesitated, then lowered himself into the chair, his small frame looking lost in the sea of velvet cushions. But across the table, Kunlay's eyes burned. His fork froze midair. To him, this was an insult. A boy from the streets, seated next to his wealthy aunt as though he were family. Kunlay forced a smile, but in his heart, hatred bubbled like hot oil. Dinner began. Tunde ate slowly, carefully, afraid to break any rules. He watched the others pick their cutlery with ease, wiping their lips with napkins, drinking wine with practiced elegance. He copied them as best he could, though his hands trembled whenever a servant passed behind him. For a while the atmosphere seemed calm, but then Kunlay leaned back in his chair, his voice loud enough for all to hear. So, Aunt, he said, dabbing his lips with a silk napkin, tell us again, who exactly is this special guest at our table tonight? Madame Abeke glanced at him sharply. You know very well who he is, Kunlay. His name is Tunda, and he is under my protection. Kunlay chuckled softly, swirling his wineglass. Ah, yes, under your protection. From the streets, wasn't it? You found him begging in the rain, I heard? The hall grew quiet. All eyes turned to Tunda. His face flushed red, his hands clenching under the table. Madame Abeke's voice was firm. Enough, Kunlay. But Kunlay leaned forward, his smile twisting. No, Aunt, I am only curious. Tell me, boy, how does roasted chicken taste to a child who has lived on scraps? Do you even know how to use a fork? Or do you prefer eating with your hands by the gutter? The words hit Tunda like stones. His throat tightened. The laughter of servants echoed in his ears, though none dared to laugh openly. He lowered his gaze, pushing his plate away slightly. Madame Abeke slammed her hand on the table. Kunlay! Her voice thundered and the glasses rattled. You forget yourself. This boy has shown more honor than many men in this city. Do not ever humiliate him again. The hall fell into silence. Kunlay forced another smile, bowing his head slightly. As you wish, Aunt. Forgive me. I only spoke carelessly. But deep inside, his anger grew darker. He could not bear it. This street boy stealing his aunt's attention, sitting in places meant for him, breathing air that belonged to the wealthy. When dinner ended, Kunlay retreated to his room upstairs. He paced like a lion in a cage, his mind spinning. No, he muttered to himself. This cannot continue. If Aunt insists on keeping him here, then I will make sure the boy leaves on his own." His eyes gleamed as an idea formed. The next morning, Tunda woke early. A servant had given him a small room near the servants' quarters. Though simple compared to the glittering chambers of the mansion, to Tunda it was paradise. Clean sheets, a real mattress, and a roof that didn't leak when rain fell. He washed his face, whispered a small prayer of thanks, and stepped into the courtyard. The sun was just rising, casting golden light across the fountains. For the first time in years, Tunde felt hope stir in his chest. But Kunlay was watching. From a balcony above, Kunlay leaned against the railing, his eyes cold. He had prepared his plan. Later that day, while Madame Abeke was away at a business meeting, Kunlay approached Tunda. His smile was friendly, his tone sweet as honey. "Ah, little cousin," he said, clapping Tunda on the shoulder. "You are settling in well, I see. Aunt must really like you." Tunda nodded nervously. He wasn't sure what to say. Kunlay leaned closer. "Tell me, do you want to stay here forever? To live in luxury, eat fine food, and wear clean clothes?" Tunda swallowed. The truth was yes, he wanted that. But something about Kunlay's voice made his stomach twist. Kunlay's smile widened. "Then you must learn the rules of this house. Do you understand? One mistake, and Aunt will throw you back into the streets." Tunde's eyes widened. She would not do that." Kunlay chuckled darkly. "You think so? Trust me, I know her better than you do. Do exactly as I say, and maybe you will last here." Tunde's chest tightened. He nodded slowly, not knowing what else to do. Kunlay's voice dropped lower. "Good. Then tomorrow, when the servants bring Aunt's documents to the study, you will take one and bring it to me." Just a small test of loyalty, Tunde froze. "Steal from Madame Abeke?" Kunlay's smile faded into a sneer. "Not steal. Borrow. She will never know. But if you refuse, well, Aunt may find out certain things about you, things that will make her send you away." Tunde's heart pounded. He didn't know what to say. Kunlay clapped him on the back again, his tone suddenly cheerful. "Think about it, little cousin. Do as I say and you'll remain in this paradise. Refuse, and you'll be back in the rain by tomorrow night." He walked away, leaving Tunde standing frozen in the courtyard, fear and confusion twisting inside him. That night, as Tunde lay on his bed, his mind battled. Madame Abeke had shown him kindness he had never known. But Kunlay's threat echoed in his ears. If he obeyed, he would betray Madame Abeke's trust. If he refused, Kunlay would find a way to destroy him. Tears stung his eyes. He clenched his fists in the dark. For the first time since stepping into the mansion, Tunde wondered, had he truly walked into a blessing or into a trap? Tun thought the mansion was a safe haven, but jealousy has set a trap. Will he obey Kunlay's cruel command, or will he risk losing everything? Stay with us, because the storm is only beginning. The next morning, the mansion was buzzing with activity. Madame Abeke was expecting important guests, and the servants rushed about polishing silverware, arranging flowers, and preparing the grand sitting room. Tunda tried to stay out of the way, quietly sweeping the courtyard. His heart was heavy. Kunlay's words from the night before still echoed in his mind. "Take one of Aunt's documents and bring it to me, or you'll be back in the rain by tomorrow night." Tunda had barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Madame Abeke's warm smile. How could he betray her? Yet the thought of being cast back onto the streets with his mother starving haunted him. Just then, Kunlay appeared, striding across the marble floor in a crisp white agbada. His smile was charming, but his eyes were sharp as knives. "Little cousin," he said softly, so no one else could hear. "Today is the day. Aunt's files will be brought to her study at noon. Do not forget what I told you." Tunda's voice trembled. I cannot steal from Madam." "She trusts me." Kunlay's smile froze, then twisted into a sneer. "Trust? Do you think her trust will feed you? Do you think it will feed your mother? One mistake, and she'll cast you out. Do as I say, or you will regret it." With that, he walked away, leaving Tunde shaking. By midday, the house grew quieter. The guests had not yet arrived, and Madame Abeke was still upstairs preparing. A servant entered the study carrying a leather folder filled with contracts and financial documents. He placed it on the polished wooden desk and left. Tunde lingered in the hallway, staring at the door. His palms were sweaty, his chest pounding. Should I do it? If I refuse, Kunlay will ruin me. If I obey, I betray the only person who has ever shown me kindness. Slowly, as though drawn by invisible hands, Tunde stepped into the study. The folder sat on the desk, glinting under the chandelier's light. He reached out, his hands shaking violently, when suddenly a voice rang out behind him. "What are you doing here?" Tunde spun around, his heart leaping into his throat. It was Kunlay. He stood in the doorway, arms crossed, his smile triumphant. I wasn't doing anything," Tunde stammered, stepping back. Kunlay walked in slowly, like a predator circling its prey. "So this is how you repay Aunt's kindness? Caught red-handed in her study, trying to steal her documents?" "No!" Tunde cried, tears burning his eyes. "I wasn't stealing. You told me to." But before he could finish, Madame Abeke's voice echoed from the hallway. "What is going on here?" Both boys turned. Madame Abeke stood at the doorway, her face unreadable. Kunlay's eyes gleamed. This was his moment. "Aunt," he said smoothly, "I came to check on the study and found Tunde here, trying to take one of your files. I tried to stop him, but he was already reaching for it." Tunde's knees went weak. "That's not true. Madam, I would never steal from you." He looked at her desperately, his small frame trembling. Kunlay stepped forward, feigning sorrow. "I warned you, Aunt. Street boys remain street boys. No matter how you dress them, you cannot wash away their habits." Madame Abeke's gaze flickered between them. For a long moment, the room was silent. The weight of her eyes made Tunde's chest tighten. Finally, she stepped inside, her heels clicking against the marble floor. She moved past Kunlay and stood directly before Tunde. "Look at me," she said firmly. Tunde lifted his tear-filled eyes. "Did you try to take my documents?" His lips trembled. "No, madam, I swear. I only came here because Kunlay told me to." "Lie!" Kunlay snapped, his voice sharp now. "Do not drag me into this, boy." But Madame Abeke raised her hand, silencing them both. Her expression softened slightly as she looked at Tunde. "You speak with fear in your voice, but I do not see dishonesty in your eyes." She turned sharply toward Kunlay. "And you? Why are you so eager to accuse him? You seem more interested in his downfall than in the truth." Kunlay stiffened. His confident mask slipped for the first time. "Aunt, Enough!" she thundered, her voice filling the study. "I will not tolerate lies in my house. I will discover the truth myself. But know this, if either of you think you can deceive me, you are mistaken." She turned to Tunde and placed a hand gently on his shoulder. "Go to your room, child. Rest." Tunde nodded quickly, relief washing over him, though fear still lingered. Kunlay clenched his fists as Madame Abeke swept out of the room. His plan had failed, but only for now. As the door closed, his whisper slithered through the air like a snake. "You may have won today, boy, but tomorrow I will make sure you're gone for good." The mansion grew heavy with tension over the next few days. Madame Abeke had grown quiet, her eyes sharper than ever, as if she were watching everything. Tunde felt the weight of suspicion still lingering in the air. Kunlay, on the other hand, walked with false confidence, smirking whenever their paths crossed, but deep inside he was unsettled. Something in Madame Abeke's silence frightened him. One evening, Madame Abeke gathered both boys in the living room. The air conditioner hummed softly, but the room itself felt suffocating. "I have been thinking," she said slowly, her voice calm but heavy. "There are things in this house that are not right. Betrayal is a poison, and I will not allow it under my roof." Kunlay swallowed, his throat suddenly dry. She raised a small remote control and pressed a button. The television on the wall flickered to life. Grainy black and white footage filled the screen. CCTV footage from the study. Tunde gasped. There he was, standing in the room, staring at the folder. But then, the camera revealed the truth. Kunlay entering the study, cornering him, and whispering threats before accusing him. The room fell silent. Tunde's knees went weak with relief, but Kunlay's face turned pale. Madame Abeke's eyes burned with fury. "So, it was you, Kunlay. You tried to frame an innocent boy. You tried to destroy him just to feed your jealousy. Aunt, please. Kunlay dropped to his knees, his agbada brushing the marble floor. I made a mistake. I was blinded. Please forgive me. Forgive you? Her voice thundered, and even the servants watching from the hallway trembled. You dared to betray my trust. You wanted to cast out the very boy who has done nothing but serve with honesty. She turned sharply toward him. Pack your things. Leave my house tonight. Kunlay's world crumbled. His pride shattered. He began to weep openly. Please, Aunt, don't send me away. I beg you. Give me another chance. Tunde's heart pounded. He should have felt victorious. After all, Kunlay had made his life miserable. But instead, he saw the desperation in Kunlay's eyes, the same kind of desperation he once felt while begging in the rain with his mother. Madam, Tunde whispered, stepping forward. His voice trembled, but his words were steady. Please, don't send him away. The room froze. Madame Abeki turned to him, her brows knitting in disbelief. Tunde, after all he has done to you, you still plead for him. Yes, madam, Tunde said softly. When my mother and I were on the streets, no one showed us mercy. But you did. You gave me a chance when everyone else turned away. How can I deny Kunlay the same mercy? Maybe he can change if you forgive him. Kunlay looked up at him, stunned. His lips quivered as tears streamed down his face. Tunde, he whispered, after everything I did to you, you still... Please, Tunde said again, looking at Madame Abeki. Don't send him back to nothing. Give him one more chance. For a long moment, Madame Abeki said nothing. Her eyes softened as she looked at Tunde. Then slowly she let out a heavy sigh. You are wiser than your years, child, she said finally. Very well. Kunlay, you will stay, but this is your last chance. Betray my trust again, and you will leave this house forever. Kunlay broke down, bowing his head to the ground. Thank you, Aunt. Thank you, Tunde. I swear I will change. I will never betray you again. Tunde knelt beside him and helped him up. The two boys, once enemies, stood side by side. For the first time, Kunlay's smile was not arrogant, but humble. That night, something shifted in the mansion. The bitterness that once hung between them gave way to something new. A fragile bond, born not of blood, but of forgiveness, began to take root. Against all odds, Tunde forgave the very boy who plotted against him. Madame Abeki was stunned, and Kunlay's heart finally softened. What began as jealousy turned into a new brotherhood. But will this fragile peace last, or will new challenges test their bond? Stick with us, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. The mansion was unusually warm that morning. For the first time in weeks, laughter echoed in the hallways. Madame Abeki sat in her favorite armchair, watching the two boys, Tunde and Kunlay, playing a game of Ayo by the window. Their rivalry had melted into something else, something fragile but real. Kunlay, once so proud and arrogant, now deferred to Tunde with humility. He had learned his lesson. Madame Abeki's lips curved into a smile, but her thoughts wandered to Tunde's mother. She remembered that rainy day when the woman had clutched her son close, begging the heavens for mercy. The image refused to leave her mind. That evening, she summoned her driver. Go, she said. Find the woman who raised this boy. Bring her to me. The next day, the mansion's gates swung open. A frail woman in a simple wrapper stepped through, her eyes wide in disbelief. Tunde's heart leapt. Mama, he cried, rushing forward. My son, she gasped, pulling him into her arms. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she clung to him. You look so different, so well fed, so happy. Oh, my child, what a miracle this is. Madame Abeki stood watching, her heart swelling. She approached gently. You raised a fine boy, she said softly to Tunde's mother, a boy with kindness and strength beyond his years. This house is too empty without a mother's love. Stay here. Let this mansion be your home as well. The woman's eyes widened. Stay here? In this palace? Yes, Madame Abeki said firmly. No more rain, no more hunger. You and your son belong here now, and together we will rebuild this family. At those words, Kunlay stepped forward. For the first time, he bowed his head respectfully before Tunde's mother. "Forgive me," he whispered. "I wronged your son, but he saved me from losing everything. I want to be his brother, not his enemy." Tunde's mother placed a trembling hand on his shoulder. "Then be brothers," she said warmly. "Life is too short for hatred." Tunde reached out and clasped Kunlay's hand. The two boys locked eyes, this time not with rivalry, but with trust. Madame Abeke raised her hands and declared, "From this day forward, this is not a house divided. It is a home united." The servants cheered. The mansion, once filled with suspicion and conflict, now pulsed with joy. That night, as they all sat around the grand dining table, Madame Abeke at the head, Tunde and his mother by her side, and Kunlay seated humbly across, the room glowed with something greater than wealth. It glowed with forgiveness, family, and love. For Tunde, it was a dream fulfilled. From the cold streets to a warm home, from hunger to abundance, from loneliness to family, his journey had come full circle. And as laughter filled the air, he knew one thing: kindness, even the smallest act, could change destinies. And so, Tunde's story teaches us a lesson that will never grow old. Kindness always returns, forgiveness heals even the deepest wounds, and true family is not built by blood alone, but by love. What did you learn from this tale? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more incredible stories that will touch your heart.